So it's difficult to overstate the achievement of a nationalist, a nationalist political party for the first time commanding the largest number of seats in the Northern Ireland Assembly. And at the same time, I think that the most significant issue in front of the UK, the Republic of Ireland, and America as a guarantor of the Good Friday Agreement is now getting the government, the Legislative Assembly, up and running. There are many rivalrous factions within unionism. Brexit certainly played a significant role in the background of what happened. And now the protocol, as it is currently constructed, should not stand in the way of getting all the parties up and running. I'm going to speak to the Foreign Minister, Simon Coveney, this afternoon of the Republic of Ireland. I spoke to Brandon Lewis, the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, on Friday in anticipation of the election result. I don't think that it was really a surprise if you followed any of the polling in the race, but the idea that it is now likely that you could have a Sinn Féin First Minister, I think speaks not only about the political changes that are taking place in the Republic of Ireland and the north of Ireland, but also the significance of the fact that a nationalist is likely to be confirmed as the eventual First Minister of the Northern Ireland executive. Questions?
What does this mean for all the trade issues that are still outstanding?
Well, I think that the trade issue in the North is complicated by the fact that many of the unionists see it as a threat to their identity culturally. But it's important to point out, as I did at RTE Radio this morning, and I believe BBC this afternoon, that the argument over the protocol was an accepted premise by Boris Johnson's government. He accepted the protocol and negotiated it. So now for unionism to argue that the protocol has to go, that's very different than their support for Brexit, and now the result of Brexit, which is the protocol. So I'm hopeful that, based on the conversations I've had with the Secretary of State, that all eyes will now be focused on getting the executive up and running and accepting the outcome of an election. Sinn Féin has the most seats in the Assembly. They now should have the First Minister's job.
Could you explain to our listeners that may not know much about Irish politics why this is significant? What happened?
Well, it's significant for a lot of reasons, not the least of which we're on the 100th anniversary of a state that was contrived for the purpose of keeping a unionist majority. I mean, the state was gerrymandered for the sole purpose of the first Prime Minister of the North, Edward Carson, who proclaimed proclaimed a Protestant state for a Protestant people. So the demographic trends now in the North are clear. You will have a nationalist majority when the next census is reported. And one of the great parts about the Good Friday Agreement, which I participated fully in, was that we prescribed a series of eventual outcomes. You could be British, you could be Irish, you could be Northern Irish. That was up to you. But everybody gave up something to get us to the Good Friday Agreement, which is now a template for the world to witness. When you consider with the Good Friday Agreement that everybody had to give up something. So the Republic of Ireland gave up its land claims to Articles 2 and 3 of its Constitution. And the United Kingdom they gave up the border. The significance of that, I, again, cannot overstate. So what we're seeing here is a dramatically reshaped argument over, at one time, was the largest and longest standing political dispute in the history of the Western world. So democratic values played out on Saturday. The elections took place, and now it's time for all the people in the North to get on with putting that government up so that it might move forward with the mundane issues of public life.
Was this election a reaction to Brexit?
In some measure it is, yes, that's for sure. The Democratic Unionist Party, they were the only political party in the North to support Brexit. Sinn Féin, the Social Democratic Labour Party, the Alliance Party, and most of the Ulster Unionist Party, they all resisted Brexit. And on election day in the North, 56% of the people voted against Brexit. And I think that what we're looking here is part of the fallout where the DUP, they had great difficulty explaining their position, and it certainly harmed their electoral forecasts.
Folks voted their pocketbook in some ways.
Well, they voted their pocketbook, but part of the protocol was to allow the North, because it's the only border with the Republic of Ireland, to remain within the European Common Market. That was a necessity. So I think that the benefits here are obvious. I talked to the Commissioner Sekovic on, I believe, Monday or Tuesday of last week, and the European Union, they are not going to back down on this issue. They are open to revising the protocol, but what they will not do is relinquish it.
Can I ask a question on another topic? Do you think the Senate bill to guarantee the right to abortion has any chance of passing? If it doesn't, does Congress have any other avenues to protect access to abortions?
Yeah, I think that the question is obvious, and I don't think that they're going to have the votes in the Senate. The House already did their work last year on this. I think this would be a significant setback if the Supreme Court leaked document were to prevail. And at the same time, I believe that President Biden will take a strong position on this. This would be a huge step backwards. The document as prescribed and as we've all read it, I hope is not the final product.
Is there a final product that would be acceptable?
I think that one of the challenges you have here, which is easy through the rearview mirror, is to say that you're generally better off, as we might have been 50 years ago, with a political solution, although that does not seem as though it would have happened. And the political system through electioneering is generally better prepared for these sorts of decisions. But I think that in this instance here, the Supreme Court decision has the potential to undo 50 years of what formerly was described as settled law.
And the House has already voted.
The House has already voted, yes. Yeah. We could reconstitute that and do it again to make our position known. But I also think that you might be able to get the 50 in the Senate, but the filibuster prevents you from making it law.
Are you in favor of the Massachusetts Senate bill to allow undocumented immigrants to obtain driver's licenses?
I am. I think it's a very practical solution. I think that some of the opposition has been overstated. The state of Tennessee uses it. It works quite well. I think that in this instance here, that making sure that they have insurance is also important in allowing people to drive back and forth to work. I don't think that that's an inhibitor of economic success, that's for sure. And it also gives you a chance to better know who's here. So I think that we should look at that from the plus side. The whole issue now of immigration continues to roil the country. where we should be able to find a solution. You have to know who's inside of the country, and I think through driver's licenses you have a better idea who is inside the country.
The final paperwork is due tomorrow, right, for getting on the ballot. You're running, right?
I am doing that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And circling back to Ireland, just how big a deal is this vote and why?
Symbolically, you can't overstate it. I think that you've watched a consolidation of nationalist voters who I think objected to the idea that the DUP said you can't have a nationalist to be the first minister. Remember, the interesting part about the argument too is the first minister and the deputy minister, they have the same power. So much of this is based upon the symbolism of the achievement, but it's seismic. That doesn't mean we're getting any closer to resolving still some of the differences that they have. But by and large, the Stormont government has worked in the fact that we're now headed toward the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, which America heavily influenced. We were honest brokers, we were fair arbiters, and I think that it's very significant as witnessed by the reaction of the two parties.
What are some of the ways the work of our Democratic partners in Northern Ireland support peace and stability across the region?
Well, again, I think that the construct of the Good Friday Agreement was largely not just based upon compromise, but it meant that everybody had to give up something they already had. And that's the point about Articles 2 and 3 of the Irish Constitution, which laid claim to the 6 counties of the north. Ireland relinquished that. And the United Kingdom, they relinquished the border. So today you can move from Dublin to Belfast or from Donegal to Derry without any sort of a check. And just to highlight my own experience, in 1989, I was on a bus with the Speaker of the House, Tom Foley, and at the Donegal-Derry border check, the bus was stopped, and British soldiers in full gear, heavy armaments, and night vision, they boarded the bus and searched it from top to bottom. It was a militarized state, and there were 30,000 British soldiers in an area the size of the state of Connecticut. Today, if you cross the whatever was supposed to be the border, your phone pings. That's it. That's it. And I think that's a startling achievement. And the other nice part about this, despite the backdrop of, again, a difficult election cycle, the other part of it that's significant is nobody's ever talking about going back to the bad old days. In that small area I described, 3,800 people, almost 4,000 people died, and thousands were maimed. And I think that Bill Clinton's decision, with the urging from us, by the way, to involve himself and immerse himself in the details, paid a very handsome dividend for world peace.
You talked about sort of being a pattern, a prototype that can be used elsewhere around the world. Can you give some examples of where
The South Africans have used it, specifically. I know that in the Middle East that advice has been sought from many of the major players in the success of the Good Friday Agreement. And the other part of it I think is significant. It was, by and large, in the end, the hardest men and women who made the agreement, which means it's more lasting, I suspect. Anybody who would have suggested that Ian Paisley would have agreed to sit in government with the Sinn Féin leader, Martin McGuinness, if you said that 30 years ago, that would have been very unlikely. Today, it's an accepted premise.